Hey, so my name is Melanie. I am the design lead for info.nl. And at Info, we are a agile product development studio here in Amsterdam, not here in Eindhoven. And I wanted to start this talk by showing you this little video that we put together looking at connections around public spaces. And sorry, the volume is a little bit louder than expected. One of the things that I think is really important when we look at connecting the future is that at some point in the last 5 years, we had probably hundreds of millions of devices that were connected to the internet. But in the next 6 months, the next 8 months, the next year, we're going to have so many more devices that are connected to the internet and that are watching us, that are calculating things, that are constantly tracking our movement, and are putting out a lot of noise and possibly tweeting and things about it. So in my mind, I am a designer. I didn't start out in a traditional form of design. I actually studied economics. But I quickly started working in technology, and what I realized was that I really loved people, I understood people, and that we needed to think about one of the biggest challenges, which is how do we actually turn technology into an extension of human behavior? How do we understand human behavior, and how do we design around that? I think especially when we look at the Internet of Things, we need to have a bit more intent in how we actually approach things. The Internet of Things, is everyone familiar with the term, actually, in the room? No? So basically, it's the idea that you can have an object that is technology enabled and digital. I think that with the Internet of Things that we need to be designing for humanity rather than technology. Mainly because if you look around the room, probably a number of you have Fitbits, probably a number of you have maybe even a water bottle that looks like this. I think that we have a danger of having a bunch of crap that's plastic, that's been smart because there's a chip on it. And we all have these things that we don't actually understand why they've been made smart or what we can do with it. If you look at some of the shifts that are happening in technology at the moment, screens are becoming less of an importance in the dialogue that we're having between each other, between data systems, between technology. And, but yet, we don't really have a lot of objects that are being smart and helping us in a way that they should. And we have a danger of having a bunch of pieces of plastic that are never used again because there hasn't really been an intent for what that interaction should have been. We've been doing research at Info, so we have a labs department that takes a look at a lot of trends in technology. One of the things they've been looking at is around haptics, so the idea that objects can have a different sensory physical impact. Here, one of the projects that was really a passion of mine and got me into technology in the first place was I was working in Toronto at a hackathon for water, and we found out there was a lot of water quality issues in Canada, and people weren't actually able to test the water that they were drinking, so they had to boil water every time they wanted to use it, no matter what, whether it was safe or not. They just couldn't trust it. And so we were working with a couple of universities, and they had been trying to get sensors that were small enough and cheap enough that people could actually test on their own. But it just didn't exist, and that was about 3 years ago. And now there are sensors that are available that we can test and applications that go along with it so that we can track real-time quality of water. And I wanted to show this example because it was an interaction that someone really thought through. The problem was whether or not you could find out if your water was clean. The hardware could test for a number of different factors. But then the person who created the application, the software application, needed to think about the service on top of that and how people were going to use it. I think that designers have a large role to play. A lot of the speakers this morning also ended on a note to say that designers have a responsibility to ensure that technology is purposely designed and created. I think traditionally designers' roles were either to shape form, to give shape to form, and increasingly I think that it's a designer's role to actually ensure that we have change made in our world. And I think it's really important for designers now to really consider how they can create objects that are useful and that are going to be used for a long period of time. And the Internet of Things actually enables us to have objects that can adapt. So they might be a physical form that through technology and through the internet and the software that's embedded in it can actually change the experience with which we use that object. For this, I'd like to show an example of this doll called Vaikai. This doll was created by a designer who wanted to rethink how we play with toys. And they put sensors inside of these beautifully crafted artisanal wooden toys that made the doll vibrate. If you shake it, it will actually say ouch. It will engage with the person who has it in their hand. And the process of her role in this was to constantly consider, okay, how is someone actually going to hold this? What is the sensory feeling that they're going to have when they touch it? So they decided to really find, to find artisans who are doing really good woodworking so that the actual tactile feeling of it was an enjoyable experience. But over time, as they can put more and more software in it, then they can adapt what the sensors are doing. You can have a second Vaikai doll, and you can play back and forth between it. And it means that what we've been able to do is create a doll that at some point might have been thrown out, but instead you can change the experience of playing with it, and children can maybe, and hopefully will enjoy using it for many, many more years. I'm really excited at Info because one of the things that we've done is research around the Internet of Things, and we've learned that in the next few years there are 3 trends that are going to be, they're already happening. They're quite prominent, especially in this new connected future. One is that the interaction between screens and people is going to change. 2, that you can have adaptive and evolving experiences through software. And the third is that if you can really, if you can create digital services that talk between hardware and software, then it's exponential where you can actually go with the connected objects that you're creating. To make this a little bit more tangible, I want to show you a video of one of the projects that we worked on.
Touch. It's something we take for granted. Yet it's such a vital aspect of our lives, especially at an early age. Newborns who have had ample physical attention are at a lower risk of behavioral, emotional, and social problems as they grow up. But for premature babies, this is a lot more difficult. When born too early, babies have more health problems and may need to stay in the hospital longer. If the outer layer of their skin isn't fully developed, it may be too thin to apply monitoring sensors. By the time the outer layer is thick enough, the wires prohibit parents from bonding with them physically. We are developing a patient and parent-friendly solution. The Smart Jacket consists of a soft jacket, replacing all the current sensors and wires, allowing parents to take their child out of the incubator for longer periods of time. The jacket features soft and dry electrodes that do not cause any pain on removal. This reduces infant stress substantially. These signals are sent wirelessly to a patient monitor at the intensive care unit. The Smart Jacket also creates a home care situation, serving as a vital signs monitor that can be accessed by parents using a smartphone or tablet and remotely in the hospital. The Smart Jacket was developed by leading specialists in the field. We believe that a patient and parent-friendly respiratory monitor is especially important. Because where would a child be without a mother's touch?
So Smart Jacket has actually evolved, and they have a bit of a different product that I think is actually being exhibited at Dutch Design Week. It's called the Bambi Belt, so you can go and see that. I wanted to talk a little bit more about how you can actually bring technology into creating experiences like this. So the problem that SmartJack was trying to solve is that as you saw in the video, that the materials for the sensors are usually attached with some sort of it's not necessarily plastic, but something similar to a Band-Aid, an adhesive. But baby skin are so fragile that they can't actually have it on for a very long time because you don't want to rip the skin. So babies had to stay in hospitals for a long period of time because they had to have constant monitoring, and nurses who were quite experts in actually being able to put those sensors on and off. And one of the advances happening on the hardware side is that sensors you can actually have them in different forms. You can put them in fabrics, you can put them in really thin pieces of plastic or metal. And so you can actually start creating applications like the Bambi Belt, where it's a soft cover that's around someone and it's sensing the information. The other side of this is that there's a lot of different types of components that you can use in the hardware business, and a lot of different frameworks on the software side that you can use to connect it. So one of the things we've been looking at with Connectable, which is a framework that can help people to be able to create Internet of Things products, is how you actually can separate the front-end technologies from the back-end technologies to be able to bring these things together. And the role that a designer plays in this is to make sure that that all works together, that there's a seamless flow of data to the object, that there is a service that's been designed digitally to be able to connect that to the actual software, and from that you can create applications, or you can monitor, so you can put it into an iPad, and that's how you can really and truly evolve different things. One of the other things that we're doing at Info, and I'll tell you a little bit about that after, is a conference called ThingsCon. And that brings together a lot of different people to talk about the Internet of Things. And I think that we as designers, as user experience designers, need to have more conversations with each other about what ideas we have for the future. And that way we can start to find out a little bit more about the complexities that exist in creating this connected future. Because I don't think that making water bottles smart, or, I like to run and I like to know the stats when I'm running. I don't think that's a big enough opportunity that we're looking at when we think about designing with physical things. Why aren't we thinking beyond that? Why aren't we thinking beyond services? Looking at some of the biggest and messiest problems that can exist instead of just focusing on how to optimize the energy efficiency of our homes. I think that is it. Just wanted to leave you with this message. In the end, we are all human beings. And so because of that, I think that we have a service to provide. Just before I'm done, because I have a little bit more time. I think you should all take a look at the Internet of Things Manifesto. It was put together by a number of different universities, by some agencies that exist, and it came up with a number of different things that we should all look at and do to responsibly create a better world of connected objects. So thank you.
Thank you, Melanie. Is it actually your opinion that there are a lot of IoT initiatives that are just plastic with a Wi-Fi sensor or whatever, and they're just useless initiatives?
I think most of it, to be honest. I mean, not everything. I think we can find some interesting things. But I think IoT really started out as people being able to tweet messages out. So having your Nest maybe at home. Well, actually, sorry. A Nest is a good example because you can actually find out about things that maybe are happening that are not good in your home, so a fire, or you can see temper control, you can earn some money. But I think predominantly, it's trying to figure out, okay, how can we make objects communicate out? It's not necessarily always communicating.
So like the plant in my house that tweets me if it needs water.
Right, exactly.
Stupid idea.
It can be an interesting idea if you're looking at commercial applications of it. Something like Growficient, which is another project that Connectable is working on, actually tracks water usage in plants within greenhouses. So on a larger scale, that can be really interesting. But what value is that plant, that application telling you when your plant needs water, actually adding for
But
you.
isn't that just the phase that we're in? Because, well, in a way, earlier today we saw the example again of the connected fridge,
Yeah.
and it was said again, because it tweets, I can tweet to the message to the fridge, I think,
Right.
is there any beer in there?
Yeah,
And that's an example that we know for a decade, maybe?
And it can remind you that, yeah, you should pick up some more beer, right? But why isn't your fridge actually taking a look at the patterns of behavior around your eating? You know, if you forget for a number of days to eat vegetables, why isn't it learning a bit more about, you know, your eating patterns and suggesting to you healthier recipes or suggesting new recipes? I know that's coming, and I think you're right. It is a phase that we're in.
Because we can create these ideas now.
Yeah, exactly.
You just did.
Yeah.
So why isn't my fridge already ordering new beer then, as we speak?
I think there's a lot of things on the logistical side that need to be figured out. So we can figure out the software interactions, we can figure out the hardware interactions, but how is that beer going to get to at the right place? That requires logistics that a company would have to do for you.
Okay, but if we go away from the beer example, just in general, there are so many great ideas, and still it's in its infant, the IoT. I mean, it's not there. Is it?
Yeah, I think.
I'm not just impatient, maybe.
I'm also impatient.
Okay, that's good.
I'm very impatient because, and I mean, I also, as a designer, have a responsibility to be able to create some of these things. I think, unfortunately, there's a trend in the software industry, especially if you look at startups, to just replicate something that's successful and exists already. And so we sometimes limit our thinking. So, oh, I saw someone else had a smart fridge and this is what it did. I'm just going to make it slightly better by maybe adding Instagram photos as well as Twitter. And I think often we don't take a step back and think about what the actual problem we're trying to solve. Or maybe, yeah, maybe it's being made and we just haven't launched it yet. Who knows? There's a lot of problems.
You almost said it, I think, part of the designer's role, that you might say, it's just a stupid idea, I'm not going to design the interface because there's no use.
Oh God, I bet there's a lot of designers in this room who wish that they could often say to an idea, oh, this is really dumb, why are we doing this? And I think there's a bit of a better way of spinning that by asking why. Why is this important? And for me as a designer...
So you should challenge it.
I always challenge these things. I might not
make
automatically say it's stupid, but I always want to make things better. And I really want to challenge clients that I'm working with, both on the software and in this new space of the Internet of Things, to consider why they think that a solution should be made. I think often we come with a solution to a problem rather than actually starting from the problem.
Challenging the problem. So that's that was my question. It's part of the role of today's designer?
I think so. I think that today's designer needs to be a bit of a combination between an investigator, someone who's curious and just wants to know why something's being done a certain way. We need to really broaden our thinking and look at different industries than just the ones we work in to see how problems are being solved there. And we, you know, especially for people working in the digital space, we have pretty defined mediums like a phone or a computer or website that the best practices in design have kind of been optimized at this point. So why don't we just start thinking of solutions that don't involve a computer or a phone? So that's the potential of the Internet of Things. But just please, can we be better than just creating another plastic water bottle that tells us to drink more?
You made that point clear, and next year you might be challenged to come up with more nice examples, just like the baby bell.
Yeah, so, I hope so.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.